see what's going on out here in the world of sound. Motor Mouth Mall working this thing one fat watt at a time. Pointed the wrong way. Maybe I have to swing this thing back up around the northwest. Radio station Motor Mouth Mall cruising. I got down.
Yeah, 10 Roger. I got you up in there. Yeah, you said you're pointed east. Still getting you in pretty good over here.
Well, I got you up in here pretty good, too. And I'm receiving you on the back side of the beam, so it'll only get better, I think, as I spin around, break.
Yeah, 10-4. That last transmission, I barely got you in. It sounded like I was in a null.
Yeah, go ahead and keep talking. You were in the side null.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just keep this thing keyed up so you can get me in as good as you can over here. But yeah, I'm curious to see what this thing's doing on your receive now. You know, I did a bunch of different things on these antennas, and I haven't had a chance to really, I mean, DX has been pretty hit and miss, man. I haven't really gotten a chance to get any feedback, and that's kind of iffy anyway. But you know, the locals aren't on very much anymore, so I can't get a consistent check on the signal strength on these antennas. I mean, like I was telling you before, I mean, the antennas they tuned really well. Just want to make sure it's doing what it was doing last time I was here. I think I was getting into your receive like around 9S units, I think, when you set the attenuation up on the SDR correctly or differently. So yeah, I believe it was 9S units. Might have been 8. I don't remember.
Yeah, I recall 8, and you're still at 8, and you sound bodacious. You're all up in here sounding really, really, really good. And, yeah, I don't know if I told you the last time that we talked. Well, maybe it was before that or after. I don't remember. Anyway, I took out the MFJ box, the little MFJ antenna switch box. I took that out because a lot of people were complaining that my S-meter reading was always about 30 dB low from what the real signal was. And it's true, it was, because it has a built-in attenuation in it that I didn't really care for. But anyway, I wasn't so sure that taking it out was a smart idea. So I thought, well, worst comes to worst, I can put it back in. So I put a regular Dow key relay in there. And now my receive signal is strong, and everything is back where it's supposed to be. And I'm not obliterating my own. I'm not obliterating my own signal. So that's all good. So anyway. I believe, do I have the, I want to make sure I've got the amp on. Yeah, I've got the amp on. I'm doing it should be about 120 watts or so. So I do have the amp on at 120 watts a break.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah, I'm getting you in about 9S units on the key, and you're swinging about 10 over 9. So it's actually quite a bit further down than what I normally get you in. I think on the key you were doing 20 over 9, swinging to 30 over 9 or something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure why. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's my antennas or what. I don't know if it's on my end or your end. Could be some weird atmospheric too.
I did double check to make sure I had it on. That's weird. I would expect that if I was on the big box, but I'm only on these 120 birds, so I wouldn't expect too awful much. Plus, I think I've got them turned down a little bit. I see the meter across the room. It might be down. I think I've got the driver box, which is the little Messenger M500. I think I've got it down on low. So instead of medium, I've got it on low. So that's probably, that's probably half an S unit difference anyway. But I don't know why it's so different, except for if it was the big box versus not the big box. But anyway, bottom line is you got a hammer up in here. You sound real good. The audio sounds phenomenal, by the way. I'd like to hear the session you were on last time compared to where you are now. I sure like what I hear right now.
Okay. Yeah. This is so much different. I appreciate it. Yeah, I went in and completely changed up all my equalizers. Ended up changing up compression by quite a bit. And when I was talking to you on the phone, I hadn't changed the reverb because it seemed to favor the changes of the EQ and everything else I did. And I've done some adjustments since the last time I talked to you on the phone, and that threw my reverb completely out of whack. So I hate when I have to go in there and make adjustments to that thing. For some reason, it's not something I like doing. You listen to reverb too long, and then it just all starts sounding the same, and you don't know if you're going the right direction or not. But so I did have to get in there and change that up. But yeah, pretty much everything is totally changed since the last time I was out here. But yeah, let me turn on my monitor and open up Reaper and switch over to that other session file.
All right, sounds good. And in the meantime, I'm going to try to play this back and just hope it does you justice. I don't know what's going to happen here because I made some changes too, as you could probably tell on my end. Let me see here if I can play this back one time and see what happens.
To go in there and make adjustments to that thing. For some reason, it's not something I like doing. You listen to reverb too long, and then it just all starts sounding the same, and you don't know if you're going the right direction or not. But so I did have to get in there and change that up. But yeah, pretty much everything is totally changed since the last time I was out here. But yeah, let me turn on my monitor and open up Reaper and switch over to that other session file.
Oh yeah, I sure like the way that sounds. That's bodacious. Ain't no doubt about that. All right, sounds good. I'll sit back and wait here and see what happens. This next key, motor mouth mall cruising. Let me turn my headphones down. I have my headphones up kind of high, and I can hear them. Hello, talking back just a little bit. So yeah, got to turn those things down. Anyway, sounds perfect over here. I like what I hear. Let me turn my audio down too. I might be just on the verge of overmodulation. Let me turn that down just a little bit more right there. All right, we're back and reading the mail.
Okay, yeah, that does sound a lot better. You must have just been slightly pinching the carrier. I mean, I didn't really notice it until you turned it down. Yeah, your audio is definitely different. It's a little bit more mid-rangey than you normally are. It's definitely a lot louder. So yeah, it still sounds really good. It's just a little bit different than last time I was out here. But yeah, let me switch over. I'm still on the same session, so let me switch over to my old one. Okay, this is the one I was on last time I was out here. To me, this is borderline starting to sound harsh and a little bit pinched and flat. So it's quite a bit more boosted in the top end. And let me switch back to the one I've been using, the one I was using when I rolled in. Okay, now we're back on the one I've been using. But you should be able to hear a difference over there. I can definitely hear a pretty noticeable difference in my headphones.
Oh yeah, absolutely, very noticeable. Matter of fact, I like the one today, the one that you rolled in on better. It's not as sharp on the high end. I like the reverb better. I like the tonal balance better. It sounds like it's a little bit less strained. So I'm going to play them both back to back for you and see if this does it justice. You can hear the same thing I'm hearing. Check it out. Here goes. I'm not going to play the whole transmission back, just part of it.
A little bit pinched and flat. So it's quite a bit more boosted in the top end. And let me switch back to the one I've been using, the one I was using when I rolled in. Okay, now we're back on the one I've been using. But you should be able to hear a difference over there. I can definitely hear a pretty noticeable difference in my headphones.
I like the reverb a lot better on it. It's more noticeable, a little bit more pronounced, but it's not an obnoxious reverb. It's a good sounding reverb. So I like the new one today better than the old one, I think.
Yeah, me too. That's good. Yeah, I'll be interested at watching the gate. It'd be interesting to hear the difference between the two on the gate. Because, I can hear the difference in my headphones, but it's always a little bit different. When you're watching the gate, it's definitely kind of a different perspective because you're outside of it. But, yeah, this one, it's a little, to me, like you said, it's got a little bit better tonal balance to it, and it's not as piercing on the top end, kind of cleaned up the highs just a little bit, you know, brought some of that energy down, and the shoulders looked a little bit better on my spectrum analyzer on my last EQ as well, you know, so it's not spreading out too far beyond my low pass. You know, it still kind of pushes the shoulders out a little bit. I'm sure you can see it on the SDR, but it's definitely less than it was.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Yeah, it's about the same roll-off as I have. I think I'm getting a stronger signal on myself, so my shoulders beyond the roll-off. You can see where the roll-off is on mine, about 3,600 or so, somewhere around there, 4,000, and then it tapers off from there. That's just proximity, but you can see the dB down from the shoulder down to the slope. The shoulder, the cutoff frequency is one thing, and the actual slope at the bottom of the carrier, you know, people will say, oh, it's going all the way out to 27,140 and all the way down to 27,110. But that's what you see. But that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. It's 40 dB down from the sidebands, and 45, 50, 55, 60, 65 dB down from the carrier. So that's where what people see on the SDR doesn't quite register right with them, because they see a whole picture. But what they don't realize is what each one of those little degradations going down mean. That's so many dB down from the carrier. And so, yeah, your signal is down low enough to where all I'm catching is the bottom of the roll-off and ever so slightly part of that little steep slope at the bottom. But your roll-off is real tight, real good, real clean, real clear. The audio's perfect. I like the tail on the reverb. It's just noticeable to the point where, yeah, it's beyond a real room, but not to the point where it's obnoxious reverb. So it sounds good. I love it. A perfect combination right there. And the tonal balance is great. Whether I listen to you on my headphones or if I listen to you on the speakers in the studio, you sound perfect.
Yeah, 10-4, well, good deal. Yeah, I remember I was telling you about when I was leaving my reverb alone before, and I was talking to somebody out there in DX in Texas, and they couldn't hear the reverb at all. And so, you know, most of my talking is in DX, so I did roll a little bit more up in there. And like you said, I mean, it's definitely noticeable, but it's not obnoxious, you know, and it's definitely a little bit more pronounced than if I were actually standing in a live room. You know, it's almost like I'd be standing in a cave kind of thing. But yeah, I did roll a little bit more up in there just so that they can notice it out there. But yeah, anyway, when you were talking, and just for your reference, for, you know, when you're setting up, whatever roll-off you're seeing, whatever you're seeing on your own signal on the SDR, as far as it bleeding over into the adjacents, you are not bleeding over actually out here at all, not even a little bit. I couldn't even hear a scratch. I went up and down. I went to 13 and I went to 15 several times while you were talking, and I could not even hear a scratch, a hint of you on those channels. And this, you know, these Stryker 955s have terrible adjacent channel rejection. So I generally pick up people whether they're bleeding or not. So, you know, your signal's tight, and it's all on frequency 100%.
10-4, very good. Well, that's good to know. Of course, I'm only hitting you a small signal strength. If I had you a little bit stronger, it might be a lot worse. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the amp on just for a little bit. I'm not going to leave it on because I don't want to eat up all that electricity to talk 5 miles away or 6 or 10 or 15 miles, whatever we are, you know, locally. So I'll go turn the big box on just for a second, just to see what that does in the realm of bleed over the break. And also on my gate, on my own gate, I'm going to turn the receiver while I'm talking. I'm going to go up locally here. Let me monitor the SDR and see what this does in SDR monitor mode. I'm going to go ahead and go up to 13. And if I go back down to underneath my antenna, so there's something there, and you gotta put up with that, I think, to a degree. But let me go ahead and turn my big box on and see what that does to your side of the bleed over there, Break.
Yeah, 10-4. I'll run the channel up and down selector and see if I can hear you.
Okay, now we got the big box on, and we're going to see what this does around your neck of the woods. Bobby Bouchet, Motor Mouth Mall cruising. Oh, I'm still listening to my monitor mode, so I'll go up a channel and down a channel 2. Right there. So I still have a little bit of scratch, the same as before, no difference, and I'm parked right up underneath my antenna. So anyway, we'll see what you heard on your side, and go back to the regular monitor mode here, and back to there. Okay, so see what you heard on your end, and see what the signal strength increase was too. Motor Mouth Mall working this ball peen mall, right there, right now.
Okay, so yeah, you're hitting me 30 over 9, which is, that's a lot. And I can barely hear a scratch one channel up or one channel down. I can hear that you're there. I mean, it's literally just a little bit of garbly scratch that's still at about the noise level of the atmosphere, just the general noise level. I can hear you in that noise level. You're not above it. But it's just barely noticeable, which is pretty impressive considering, like I was saying, I mean, you're hitting me 30 over 9. When you're just on the driver, you're still in the cherry patch. You're still at 9S units, slightly over, and I hear absolutely nothing. So, yeah, man, I'd say that for as much power as you're running, I don't think it gets any cleaner. Oh, and I was going to ask you too, could you put me on the 5/8 receive and see what that does?
Yeah, 10-4. Go ahead and key up, and I'll switch while you're transmitting.
All right, so you're receiving me on the beam right now, and it's doing about 8S units. So I'd like to, curious, I think that's why I remember you getting me in 9S units last time I was out here. I think you were getting me in on the 5/8. That might be true. I don't know. It's hard to remember.
I'm trying to figure out my switch box. Hold on a second here. I'm trying to figure out my switch box. It's, I got some things I got screwed up over here on this end. I got two things I got to move. I got a cable in front of my switch box, that I got to move. But that cable, hang on, that cable is responsible for making my monitor work right. So I just moved the cable, and now I got to find a spot for it to work right. Hang on here, where's it going to go? Crap. I shouldn't have done that. All right, well, anyway, I'll just ignore my monitor. Go ahead and key up again, because I moved the cable and everything else went cattywampus.
Yeah, 10-4. Just to let you know, your big box is still on. I don't know if you want to leave that on or not, but yeah. So yeah, I'm curious. Like I was saying, you know, you get me an 8S units on the beam, and you know, I'm vertical. So I would imagine that on the 5/8, I'd probably come in a little bit stronger.
Actually, you're stronger on the beam. I don't know why. There must be a problem with my 5/8 wave. I don't transmit on the 5/8 wave because there's an SWR, a big SWR issue, and I would imagine that SWR issue is causing an issue with my receive as well. So anyway, I'm going to try to put this cable back where it was. I got to do that while I'm keyed up because of the nature of the beast. It's getting better. Got to roll this cable up just right. There we go, and set it down right there. There we go. It's working. Okay. Anyway, yeah. I actually am receiving you better on the 5/8, or I mean on the beam than the 5/8 wave. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't know. Something's different, but yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it's working, so can't really complain a whole lot about it. Well, that's cool. So, what else have you been doing, man? You know, as far as I know you were telling me you're still working on the quad and looking for a piece of equipment and all of that, but what else did you end up changing with your audio processing?
More than just the stuff in the Live Professor. And I'm back on the driver, by the way. I heard somebody calling me. I'm not sure who that was. Must have been somebody up around the northwest corner. But yeah, in addition to that, I went to the Optimod, and I changed it down on the bandpass from I think I was 50 to 7K before, and I went down to 50 to 4.5K, and then readjusted the levels of the audio feeding the modulator so that I'm not using as much of the tube emulation, and letting that relax a little bit more. So it just opened up the overall sound. Not a lot of Live Professor modifications. I think I did change the reverb or the effect level on the, I'm using Maserati, the Maserati ACG. I think I was calling it AGC. It's Maserati ACG, and I was using that for the effects, but I had a lot more effects up in there, and I think I pulled out some of the effects. But I also made it full wet instead of partial wet dry. So a few little changes, but nothing major.
Okay, yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I think you got the reverb set up just right, you know. I don't hear it, you know, as far as the tone, it doesn't sound off. It sounds full, sounds like it's covering the bandwidth of your audio itself. And yeah, it sounds good. The tail's good, the amount's good. I'd say you got it dialed, man. It's not overly obnoxious, but it's definitely noticeable. So, you know, it kind of gives that sense of space.
At the same time, I hope I didn't lose any characteristics in the music realm. So I'm going to play just for a moment here. I'm going to drop some music up in here on you, right about here. See what this does. That should still sound pretty good in the music realm. I hope it does anyway.
The beginning part was good, but as soon as the beat dropped, it started getting distorted.
I wonder if that was me. Yeah, I think that was me. That should sound pretty good right there, Break.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. That was crystal clear, man. Actually, I think that's the best I've heard the music, you know, from what you're doing up there. I mean, that was really, really clean and clear. No distortion, plenty loud. Yeah, it's dialed right there.
The same computer that's doing the music is also doing the playbacks of my receiver. So check this out. I'm going to play you back one more time. Oh, stop that one. That's the problem with having two different playbacks off of one machine. You got to make sure you go to the right spot. So there's still one little artifact. I'm not going to talk about it just yet, but watch this. Here comes the playback real fast.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. That was crystal clear, man. Actually, I think that's the best I've heard the music, you know, from what you're doing up there. I mean, that was really, really clean and clear. No distortion, plenty loud. Yeah, it's dialed right there.
Oops, the only artifact that I can see now that I don't like is if I talk really quiet. Hello. Hear that little come up in the background? Hello. 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 If I don't talk loud enough, hello. It just brings the threshold up. Hello. Where you hear like a come up in there. But if I talk loud enough, then it overcomes that. But if I talk really quiet, hello, it's just enough to break the threshold to where it sounds like there's some kind of noise trailing in with my audio. But I never talk like that, so I think it's okay.
Yeah, when you're talking normal, I can't hear it at all. I mean, not even between the words. But yeah, when you got, you know, quiet there, it's definitely doing something, man. It sounds like it's background noise. You know, like there's a fan or something going on. It doesn't sound like it's in the system on this end. I don't know if it is, but to me on this end, it sounds like there's a lot of sound in the background kind of creeping up in there.
Yeah, it's electronics noise from the plugins. And if I unplug the mic, you'll still hear it. So it's still there even when the mic is unplugged, and it raises up when I talk. It's like a noise that's coming in early, and I've got the mic gain turned all the way down. Not all the way down, but I've got the mic gain on the UM2 turned, you know, the interface turned down pretty far, so it's not picking up electrical noise from the input, I don't think. But it's coming from the plugins, and I can hear it. It's just a little aggravating, but really not that bad. But it's there. it's there nonetheless. If I turn the sensitivity down on the Maserati, let me just see what that does, 005. I'm going to try something here, because the last thing I did was I turned the sensitivity up. So let me turn that sensitivity down, and it goes away. And I guess that's where it was. Hello, test. It's in the sensitivity of the Maserati. If I turn that up, it's there. And I get a little louder, I suppose, with it up, but I don't think I need it. And I can make up for that loudness, I suppose, with a little bit of the console. So I think it's okay. I think I just got rid of it.
Yeah, you did. And you know what? When you backed it down just to where the noise disappeared, you didn't get quieter. You got more dynamic sounding. With it up, it not only brings that noise in, but it flattened out the audio. So yeah, man, I'd leave it down. When you turned it down just enough to knock the noise out and kept your overall perceived loudness pretty much the same, that audio was just clean and crystal clear, man. I mean, absolutely perfect.
10-4, well, I like that. That's good. Because you know what happens when I do a playback, sometimes I'll leave my mic gain potted up on the console. And if I do that, if I leave the mic gain potted up too long and don't say anything or play something from another source, it gives the time for the processing on the mic channel to kind of relax a little bit and pull in that extra noise. And then you hear that noise along with my playback. So if I don't remember to pull the mic gain down, that noise would get up in there and interfere a little bit. So now that I pull that sensitivity down there, got rid of that noise in the background, opened up the dynamics from the audio a little bit more, that should never be a problem. I can leave my mic gain up all the time unless I want to cough or sneeze or cuss at somebody under my breath or break.
Yeah, 10-4, I hear you. I heard that, yeah. Well, you know, hold on a second. I got to step away. I'll be right back.
10-4.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, it's just like what you're doing. I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff up there, just trying to remember what's going on when you got 2 or 3 things going at the same time. Kind of get a little bit confusing, especially when you're trying to hold a conversation. But yeah, it sounds like that's the issue, and you definitely got to figure it out. So that's the biggest part of finding this. You know, when you got a situation where something's wrong and you can't figure it out, that's 10 times more frustrating, man. But you know, once you figure it out and you know how to work around it, it's always a good thing.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I'm so far pleased with, I think, the way everything's working, the playbacks, the recording playback. I can't nitpick too much more at this point, so I'm waiting on the boom truck now for the antenna, games to begin. And once I get the quad tuned up, of course, I'll have the boom truck to work on the other antennas as well. By the way, the boom truck I'm looking at, not too far from here, only about a 4-hour drive to go check it out, 3.5, 4-hour drive. It reaches 62 feet up, and it's an old tree truck. So anyway, I'm going to go take a look at that. The guy's going to get some mechanical work done on the hydraulic lines and get them done. And then I'll go take a look at it, and I think I'm going to pick that truck up, and then we'll drop it on a lowboy and haul it down to Santa Maria. And so I'll have a 62-foot boom lift over here on the property all the time, which would be really, really cool. Been dying for one of those, and you know, the price is really, 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 really right. It's really cheap, and the guys, you know, over the phone and all that stuff sounds real good, and yeah, there's mechanical issues with it, but he said, if you're not going to drive it anywhere, don't worry about it, you know, too much. But it's a diesel, and it doesn't meet EPA, smog, you know, California-related stuff, and I didn't care about any of that. All I care is that the boom works.
Oh, yeah, you know, I mean, as long as the engine will, you know, run and, you know, the power takeoff for the hydraulics and everything, that's all you need, man. You know, just get yourself, you know, like, you know, it'd be cool if you got like a tank, you know, a couple 100-gallon tank up there, and you could order fuel, have a guy come up there and a 10-wheeler or something, you know, to top off the diesel tank for you every once in a while. But you know, even if you don't do that, man, a couple of 5-gallon cans will keep the thing running, you know, for quite a while there.
Yep, 10-4. And you know, it's really interesting. I didn't even think about this until just now, but if that thing can reach 62 feet high directly above it, and I only really need it to reach about 45 feet because I don't need the tune all the way at 65 feet. I mean, if I drive underneath a particular antenna, I can get up there, but if I park the truck in is a strategic spot by the barn that if I park the truck, it'll reach if I swing the antenna to the north, this antenna that I'm talking on now, if I swing it to the north east, or if I swing the new antenna that's going to go up on the 70-foot freestanding tower to the northwest, and and the boom, the quad right where it is, I can reach all 3 of those antenna tuning points from that one truck mounting location. So if it didn't even have to drive anywhere, if all it did was run and the hydraulics worked, it would do everything I need to do. Parked in one spot there, Break.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man. You know, it's funny, if it broke down to the point to where it wouldn't actually move, that'd just be a permanent fixture like the antennas there, 10-4.
Oh yeah, I'd build a framework around it, make it look like a building. I'd build a framework around it, and then if the engine was the source for the PTO, and if it didn't have, I don't even know if it's got its own engine or not for the boom part. I'm assuming it runs off the PTO of the main engine. But if PTO went belly up, I would just put another engine with its own, a dedicated small engine for a PTO source, and just let the thing sit there and let the air out of the tires and just let it sit on the ground. Anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that. It should be a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that's definitely going to make, like you were saying before, I mean, you can do a lot more experimentation. You know, you're going to learn a lot more, and you're going to find what works better, and, you know, for a given antenna design. So that'll definitely give you a lot more, you know, a lot faster progression as far as figuring out what you like and what works the best. And yeah, so that's pretty cool. Looking forward to when you get that quad set up. It'll be interesting to see how much damage you do on me over here with that thing.
Oh yeah, I don't really thoroughly understand why I'm not getting you stronger on the 5/8 wave. When I'm pointed east, of course, the 5/8 wave gets you stronger, but pointing this thing to the north, slightly north, I don't want to go any farther west, although I don't think I have to look at you. You're over there by the freeway, right? Are you over there by the freeway, or are you a little bit more toward the west end of town, west side of town?
Well, if you pointed it pretty much at Betaravia on the 101, and then maybe a half degree towards the north, that's probably closer to where I'd be, I would think.
Okay, well, I can't go that far with this tower. I never designed this to go up to Alaska, and that would be looking right at Alaska, and I designed it to go basically from the northwest corner all the way down to Hawaii and back and forth that way. So you're on the edge of how far my rotor will actually go. And the limitation was just one wrap that I decided not to put on the spools up there. I could have put one more wrap and had a little bit more directional, but I didn't do it. So anyway, I don't want to turn much more because I don't want to overshoot. I did it once, and it was the weirdest thing. It stopped going, right? It was going farther to the west, and then it kind of stopped, and I kept going, and then it wound the other direction, and then my counterclockwise became clockwise, and clockwise became counterclockwise. So I went back and reversed that and never wanted to go back to that point again because I don't really know what kind of strain that puts the system under. So that's why I'm not pointed directly at you. And but yeah, with the quad, it's going to be, you know, both polarizations, and I'll be able to point it directly at you. So it should make a pretty big difference.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to take a chance and screw up that big antenna, man. I mean, what a pain in the ass. You know, you got it working good. It's doing what it should. You know, it's devastating out there in DX. I mean, that'd be the worst thing to do, is to push it too far and then screw it up, man. That would put you off the air for a while, you know, and then you got to deal with all that. Plus, you know, trying to get back up there on the antenna to fix it. But yeah, no, it's plenty good enough. I mean, I'm getting you all the way up, you know, you're doing just a little over 9 S units, but yeah, even on that driver, I mean, your 125 key was quite a bit higher last time. So yeah, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is it's on me, you know, with these antennas, because if everything's the same up there at your place, you know, I made a lot of changes. You know, I changed a coil, I changed a quick disconnect, I realigned them, I retuned them, reshaped the coils, all of that. So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't think that it would hurt my receive, but I don't know, man.
I want to see what happens if I go down to 25 watts. Hold on a second. Okay, now I'm at 25 watts. We'll see what that does right there. And while I'm doing this test, I want to do one more thing here. While I'm keyed up, I'm going to put the headphones on and listen to the SDR and see what the bleed over is at 25 watts. So we'll go up to 1. And then we'll go. Check 1, 2. It's just the proximity itself. It's the same whether I'm at barefoot, or just at 25 watts, or 2,500 watts. So anyway, all right, there you go. That's that, and then we'll see what you heard on your end. But that's 25 watts of carrier.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you dropped down 1 S unit, which, is probably about accurate. It's about 1/5, not 1/4, but, 4 times the power equals 1 S unit. So, yeah, you drop down to 8 S units on the key and swing it up to 9. When you're at 125 watts, you're sitting at 9 and swinging to, I would say, probably 10 over. So, yeah, it's proportional. Looked fine. Still sounds great. Didn't hear any change in the audio quality. And as far as bleed over, I couldn't hear you on either channel at 125 watts. So on 25 watts, I didn't expect to hear anything, and I didn't. I went up, down 1 channel, and couldn't hear you at all.
All right, good deal. And now I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go all the way down to barefoot, which is going to be a 1/4 watt. So let's go down to a 1/4 watt. Hold on. I never run this thing at a 1/4 watt. Never. Ever, 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 ever. Well, I won't say that, but darn near ever. Anyway, there's 1/4 watt right there. Break, break, break.
Okay, now that's interesting. I mean, your audio itself dropped down a lot. I mean, you got probably 3 or 4 times quieter, but your signal only dropped down to 7 S units. You only lost 1 S unit, 1/4 watt compared to 25 watts. So that's different. I mean, that doesn't really add up. The math doesn't add up on that. So yeah, that was a little bit strange. 7 S units. I mean, that's impressive on a 1/4 watt. However many miles I am from you. But it seems like it should have dropped down a lot more from the 25 watts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would have thought so too. It dropped down a whole bunch on my own SDR even. It dropped down quite a bit. 1/4, right? Sorry about that. A 1/2 watt. Used to be a 1/4 watt. It's a 1/2 watt right now. Anyway, it still doesn't add up. And I can't even see the signal on the scope, so I can't even tell what it's doing as far as, I see REA working, but REA is sensitive. But the scope next door, which is set to, calibrated for bigger power levels, isn't even registering anything. So the REA is looking at the output of the amplifier that I just turned off. So when I turn it on, REA is activated. REA is not looking at the driver or the big box, but they are linear. So what you see coming out of this box is the same as coming out of the other, so vice versa. Anyway, it doesn't really add up. This is a 1/2 watt carrier, and I'll go back over to the 25 watt mode. Okay, there's the 25 watt mode. It brought my signal from a 6S unit on my local receiver here, well, 6S units up to about 9 over 9, almost 10 over. And when I increase the power even a lot more, it doesn't go up that much more. So there's some inconsistency with the S meter and signal strength and proximity of the SDR, I guess. But anyway, that's back to 25.
Yeah, I mean, you were sitting at 7S units at a half a watt with 0 forward swing, no forward swing at all, and your audio was pretty quiet. You went up to 25 watts, your carrier was sitting at 8S units, but it like tripled in loudness, man. I mean, it got so much louder compared, relatively speaking. And so it sits at 8S units and forward swings to 9S units, which is good, man. I mean, that's 6 dB of forward swing. Actually, I wanted to ask you, how much forward swing am I showing on your meter up there on the SDR? Let me be quiet for a second. All right, so that's roughly about a 110 watt carrier, and it's doing about just a little over 600 PEP.
7.5 on the dead key and 8 on the peaks, roughly, and that's all that is. And I think what's happening is on the solid state box, there's an area within a range in the curve where if you hit it just right, they falsify. I won't want to say falsify, but it's a biasing related thing in an area into this. Since I'm using this amplifier so under what it could do, a lot of guys will expect an M500 to put out whatever it puts out. I only think this thing only puts out 25 watts on the highest mode that I ever run it on. So I'm using it at such a range early in its curve that I believe the linearity is causing the excess envelope growth, and I tune everything for that because that's how my station runs. And so when I turn all that off and it goes away, I believe it destroys some of the envelope and all that stuff. So I think that's where that is coming from. But yeah, you're dead key at about 7.5, swinging to 8.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely way, way down compared to normal. Usually my dead key is between 8 and 9, and there's never a lot of forward swing. Maybe a half an S unit, 1 S unit of forward swing on your station. So yeah, I'm not really sure why I'm not getting up into that receive. I do remember the last video I watched. I was seeing just a little bit of cherry patch on your SDR. So it was just creeping slightly over 9S units. I remember that. Yeah, and I'm parked in the same spot over here. No trucks around me. I don't know. It could just be some weird anomaly happening with the atmosphere too. I don't know. Or your antenna could be just at a slightly different angle than last time. So I guess there's a lot of factors there.
I was looking at something which I never really pay attention to on my radio, and I don't have the RF attenuation slider is all the way down, and when you key up, it'll key in. There's a word attenuation or attenuate, attend, and then next to it shows so many dB. And I never looked at it long enough to see what it's doing. All these years that I've had the SDR in line, I've never really paid attention to it. But with the RF attenuator slider down, and you can see this on my SDR when you look at the gate. I've got my mouse hidden over it right now, and you can see there's RF attenuation. It's all the way down. And then there's the attenuator reading right there. When you key up, it's somewhere around 31, 35, and it fluctuates. I never noticed this before. It fluctuates while you're talking. And then I keyed up, and it went to 48, 49, and it's fluctuating while I'm talking. 50, if I stop talking. So check, 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 1, 2. Anyway, it's right at about 49, 50 when I'm talking, and about 31 to 35 when you're talking. Now that number, that's an attenuation. Now where is it coming from? I don't know where. There's nowhere in software that I know to adjust that. I've gone into the settings. I've gone all over the place, and the lowest I can adjust this thing to is the RF gain controls all the way down, which still says that there's 50 dB of attenuation right now, which accounts for why when I go to full power, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave my carrier keyed up. I'm going to walk in the other room, and I'm going to turn the driver on, and we'll get off the 25 watt mode, and we'll go, and we'll see if that 49 dB goes up higher, and see if it clamps down. something going on here. Yeah, it's still at 49 and 50, even with the carrier up at 125 watts. But I want to see what it does when you key up next time here.
Okay, so now what does it do with just the dead carrier? All right, now are you saying the attenuation goes up with modulation, or does it stay pretty much the same with the carrier while I'm modulating?
On the noise floor, it drops down to 21 dB. And then when you key up with a dead carrier, it sits at 30. And when you modulate, it'll dance between 34, 35, 36, 34, 33 while you're modulating. And then when you do a dead carrier, it's back at 30 again. And when you unkey, it drops down to 21. So there is an automatic attenuation happening based on signal strength entering the SDR. And there's no place to shut that off. If I look at the settings control and you look at the IFAGC, for example, which is where you would expect to see that, there's a negative 30 IF set point that you can turn on and off, and that doesn't make a difference. And I'm not going to do it because it ends up screwing up the SDR, but it doesn't make a difference. And if I go into other modes, like, for example, cal, not there, offset, not there, there's nothing else in that area that can change that. So it's automatically doing, now it's up to attenuation 51 dB on my signal. Look at that, 51 dB. So that's the highest I've seen so far. It was at 49, 50, now it went all the way up to 51 dB. So there's something going on which is affecting the signal strength that I'm receiving you at that's not accurate to what it should be. I believe you should be hitting me stronger. I believe I should be hitting me stronger. But I'm not going to fight with it because, or try to change it because I don't want it to be more sensitive because I like it to be able to be on while I'm transmitting. And if I change it, then that's going to throw that all out of the window. It'll be like all the people with the little thumb dongles and whatnot that when they key up, it obliterates the whole entire thing, and I don't want to do that.
No, you definitely don't want to do that, man. Yeah, there's I'm not going to name any names, but there's a couple of stations out there with SDRs. When they key up, it sounds so horrible you can't even hardly understand them, man. Yeah, okay, well, you know what? That makes a lot of sense because, out there at the yard, I'll talk to guys that are 15, 20 miles away from me, which is quite a bit further than you are. I think you're probably maybe 5 miles from me. But I'll talk to those guys, and I'll hit their receives, 10 over 9, 30 over 9. So if my signal strength is being attenuated, call it 36 dB, that's 6 S units. So that adds up. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay. Yeah, I was always curious about that. But, yeah, because, that's pretty low for the power that I'm running, relatively speaking. From the feedback I get from like 4 or 5 different stations out there that are way out there in the distance, the signal strength they get me in on. I wonder if that's affecting the actual audio quality. I mean, if it's attenuating more when modulation goes up, that's a form of compression. So that would absolutely affect the audio quality on the gate, for people coming in like myself right now. So that's probably not very good, but I can see where you're coming from. You can't really turn it off either, because otherwise you'll obliterate it. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so I had 2 forms of attenuation. I had the old form of whatever 30 dB of attenuation that the MFJ box was providing, and I have this other dB of attenuation over here, which, by the way, when you're not keyed up and it's just noise floor, we're at 21, and when you key up, it goes to 30, and when you modulate, it dances around 34 to 35. So I wonder if it's not really 30. It might be 20. Maybe 10 dB plus difference. So 15 dB difference. And I would imagine you should probably take that 15 dB and add it to what my signal strength is on the S meter right now, which would bring you up to 6 would bring you up to 9 S units. And another 6 over would give you, you should be up about 10 S units. You should be, your carrier on my meter, I would imagine, should be reading 10 over, not 10 S units, 10 over 9. You should be almost 10 over 9 over here right now, maybe. Anyway, something like that. Interesting. I never paid attention to that. It's one of those numbers I looked at, I go, okay, it's fixed at whatever it is, and it is what it is. I never saw it move before. Now mine is saying 52. Now, the longer I keep keyed up, it keeps coming up to a bigger number. Each time I key up, last time it was 49 to 50, then 50 to 51. Now it's up to 52. So I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of that. Very, very strange stuff. But yeah, there's something going on there. And I wish there was a way you could toggle it on or off, but there isn't. And I don't want to take a chance of screwing up the way the SDR works. So it is what it is. But you're right there. When it's dancing up and down and showing something from your dead carrier to your modulated carrier, and it's showing a dB cut while you talk, then that's a form of compression. I don't think the dB when you're not talking is added into that, but I would say that if you're dead keying at 30 dB, minus 30 dB over, and you're swinging up to about 34 or 35 dB, it's an expansion, not a compression, right? No, that would be attenuation. So it'd be about 5 dB of compression that my radio is adding to your already existing form of compression in your audio.
Yeah, it would be like me doing 5 more dB of gain reduction in my last limiter. So yeah, that's definitely affecting the sound. I'll try to keep that in mind next time I listen to it. On the gate. So it's good information for me to have, because that helps me out a lot. Because if I sound a lot flatter on the gate than what I actually sound like in people's receives, then I'm going to be chasing the wind. And so yeah, that's good for me to know. Now, do you have a radio to receive me just on a radio, just to see what the signal strength would be on, like on your Cobra or another radio that you got over there?
Not one that'll look at the antenna. I just got through looking at my 140 or my radio, my transmit radio, thinking that I could utilize. See, now before, when I had the MFJ box in line, enough signal got through. That's another thing I don't understand. The MFJ box allowed a degree of signal to come in to the Cobra 29LX, whereas since I switched over to the dial key relay, now nothing comes in. So RF gain all the way open, skip rolling real hard. I don't see anything on that radio, and my Drake and of course the SDR when I'm in transmit is not connected to any kind of or I should say in receive. Only the SDR is the radio receiving off air, the Drake and the 148 and the 29LX in receive mode. None of them hear anything. So I should probably, I don't really use the 5/8 wave often enough to justify routing it into this box. I think I might reroute the 5/8 wave over to another receiver sometime, but it's in another room and I've got coaxials going through the wall and I can't just easily unscrew one and screw in another and reroute it. So the answer is right now, no, I don't have a radio that can receive directly from an antenna to a receiver while you're on the air transmitting. So I can't compare. And if I did, it wouldn't be the same receiver. It wouldn't be the same type of quality. It'd be another CB radio receiver. So I don't have that luxury. If I put a bypass switch somehow to where I could directly connect the SDR to an antenna without the dial key relay. Oh, wait a second. All I'd have to do would be to manually push the dial key relay one way or the other, I suppose. Anyway, I don't want to do it. Not right now.
Yeah, 10-4. It would be probably a pretty cool benefit to you just for your own curiosity's sake, because like you said, you're not using that 5/8 for anything. eventually when you get a chance, maybe drop that 5/8 to the 148 and just leave that hooked up to that. And if you ever want to check somebody's signal strength, in DX or your own or whoever, to see what it is straight, in front of the radio. That'd be interesting to have that comparison to what you're actually seeing on the SDR, because then you can know in your mind whenever you're looking at a signal strength on the SDR, how much attenuation is actually happening. I mean, they're not apples to apples because, I'm sure the SDR is more or less sensitive than the 148. They're not aligned perfectly in the same sensitivity as far as receive goes, but it'd be kind of a ballpark thing, and it'd be interesting.
Well, while you were down, I went ahead and I have a switch box that allows me to switch the audio to receive over to the the 29LX, because when I had the MFJ box, I was able to receive on that at the same time at a slightly reduced signal strength. And so I had it going into our audio switch box. Well, I switched over to the audio switch box to switch over to that receiver. And then I went over, like I said, and I pushed on the dial key relay and switched the dial key relay over to the other mode without keying up. And that puts your audio on the other receiver. My God, you sound... Now, I couldn't put that audio over the air, on YouTube. I can't switch that over because I'm using OBS, and OBS is getting the audio for this feed off of the SDR software internally, and there's no external... Anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but bottom line is, when I switched you over to hear your audio and your carrier at full strength on my 29LX, man, did it ever sound insanely awesome. It sounds good on the SDR, but it sounded bigger, bolder, bassier, heavier, richer, and more open on the 29LX through the control room monitors than it did coming off the SDR. So that's really interesting. I wasn't expecting that, but it was a night and day difference. Unbelievable. But it got better. It didn't get worse. It got better. So I think listening to my SDR is a, I'm going to say inaccurate method now, because, obviously different receive. You know what it sounded like? The difference is when I listen to my audio on the Drake versus my audio on the SDR. When I listen to my own audio on the Drake, it sounds bolder, bigger, and richer. And you've heard me do in the past on the Gates, where I switched, when I had the ability, I don't have it now, but when I had the ability to feed my YouTube stream with audio from either the 148 or the 7300 or the SDR or the Drake, you've heard the differences between the feeds. Well, the SDR always sounded not narrower, but thinner and not so heavy, and the Drake always sounded more bold. Well, that equivalence of bold to not so bold is what I heard when I went to the 29LX on your signal, and compared to the SDR on your signal. So, yeah, night and day difference. Amazing.
Okay, yeah. Well, that kind of makes sense. When you would switch over, we were talking about that before. I don't know if it was last time I was out here or the time before, but we were discussing how different receivers sound different and why the Drake sounded so much heavier and bigger than the SDR did, and neither one of us came up with an answer. So I guess the answer is the SDR is adding a lot more compression than what we thought. That compression, when you flatten it out like that, the first thing, especially the bass in your audio, my audio, the typical radio out there and regular stock radio probably wouldn't sound very much different on the SDR as it would on your LX or the Drake. But because we have so much more low-end information, I think it's triggering that attenuation first in the SDR, and it's sucking the bass out of the audio, I think. But yeah, what you heard on the LX is what other people hear in their receives when I key up. So they're hearing me a lot different than what you're hearing me there, 10-4.
Yeah, give a listen right now. I just sent you a recording that I made with my phone. Of course, it's an acoustic coupling recording, and the speakers that I recorded from are on the other side of the room, and it's not going to do it nearly the justice, I don't believe. But give a listen to the text message that I just sent you, and I manually switched over between the two different receive modes, and recorded it over the speaker or the microphone on the phone and just sent it to you. So we'll see what that sounds like. I'll listen to it too. I haven't listened to it yet. I just recorded it and sent it to you. So give a listen to your phone.
Yeah, 10-4.
Let me turn this off. The Drake was brighter and crisper, not the Drake, sorry, the SDR was brighter and crisper, and the 29LX sounded a little bit more muffled and bassier, but believe me, that's the phone doing that. In my speakers and in the room here, it sounded really bold and beautiful and nice and like I know you'd want it to sound. So, interesting there. It's not going to be nearly as bright on everybody's radio. It'll be more like it was on that on the muffled version of what you heard on there, but not muffled. It's not going to be the Drake sound. I'm sorry, the SDR sound in most people's radios. So hopefully that helps out a little bit. I wish there was a way to put that particular audio curve or whatever that is on that receiver. I wish there was a way to put that over the OBS feed so people could hear the difference between what's actually coming out of the 29LX. Now remember, my 29LX has more bass response because it does have a 2.2 microfarad capacitor in place of C33 and C40. But I did not extend the highs on it. I left the highs factory stock, but I did increase. So there's probably more bottom end on my 29LX than there would be on somebody else's 29LX. But if you heard the balance of how that sounded like in real life here in my studio, you'd be very, very pleased with what you've got.
Okay, yeah, I listened to that. And yeah, it's hard to tell, speaker phones or phones, phone speakers. Yeah, it's hard to get the gist, but I could definitely hear that. Yeah, sounded a little bit muffled, but yeah, like you said, I mean, you got more of a broader frequency response on that LX, on the lows, not on the highs, but on the lows. Yeah, so I mean, it would be interesting if you did actually hook up that 5/8 to the 148 and just get straight raw audio the way everybody else hears it, just antenna and radio. That would be interesting. Like you said, I know it's a lot of work right now. You're not going to be able to do that right now, but if you ever get bored, that'd be interesting for your own idea of what you got going, as far as what you're hearing and what you can trust. That's the key too, being able to trust what we're hearing. So yeah, it's always good to have a bunch of different. It's like getting a radio check from 5 or 10 different people. You're going to get a different answer from each one of those. You can't make everybody happy, but if you can find a happy medium, that's definitely the way to go.
Yep, absolutely true. I hope people learn something from what we're yapping about. A lot of people think, they're just yapping about technical garbage, whatever. Well, it's not. It's only garbage if you don't want to pay attention to it. This is real world stuff. We're doing real tests. We're actually trying to discuss this stuff in some sort of terminology that everybody can understand. And we're constantly learning. You and I both even are just constantly figuring other stuff out and other ways of either proving things or monitoring or playing back and, trying to be as accurate and true to what's going on as possible and acknowledging when things might be a little bit weird. So hopefully this helps somebody. I don't know. But I wanted to mention one thing. While I had that recording going and when I did that little sample for you, using the phone and with the speaker 10 feet across the room, and it sounded kind of muffled and didn't have a lot of highs in it. I did that. I listened to it again, and I specifically listened to the high-frequency articulation, and there was no, it wasn't nearly as bright, obviously, as the SDR was, but there was no lack of highs, and your S's sounded like S's, and it was still really, really nicely tonal balanced. So I'm thinking that if a person had a regular 29 or 148 and heard you without the extended lows, they would hear super crisp highs and everything would be right. The highs were just attenuated over here because of the proximity away from the speakers. High frequencies, need a lot of boost the farther away or off axis you get. And the lows were accentuated because of my capacitor. So I think, factor all that in, and I think most people would be hearing a really, really beautiful, smooth, and full spectrum sound coming out of your radio. And like I said, even in my SDR, you sound better now than I've ever heard you, and it sounds perfect. I really like the overall characteristic, and I'm just accustomed to hearing what I hear out of this radio. And better is better, and worse is worse, and I don't think that something better on this radio is going to translate necessarily to something worse on the other receiver. So apples and apples, oranges and oranges, yes, but at the same time, I'd say you got it going on. Bobby Bouchet, Motormouth Mall, your West Coast beast, dropping a hammer from time to time.
Yeah, 10 Roger on dropping the hammer, man. Yeah, that's true. Like what you were saying about the LX, it's allowing those extra lows to come in. And that's no different than if I put my headphones on and I take my high pass and roll it down, 10, 20 hertz, and all those extra lows come in, and it absolutely will mask the mids and highs. And that's the same exact effect that your LX is having on my audio, allowing more lows to come in. It's like extending, the high pass down lower and allowing more bass to come in, and you get the same effect as you would with an equalizer. You high pass a little higher and roll off some of those lows, the audio absolutely will get brighter. And so yeah, it wouldn't be apples to apples. It like you said, it is and it isn't. But yeah, if you had the 148, monitoring my audio, it would definitely sound a lot brighter. But yeah, I'm always pretty careful with the lows. Getting too much bottom end in there, man, it definitely can turn to garble in a hurry in somebody's receive. So I never really try to get real bassy audio. I always just try to get, to where it sounds full and pretty natural. And it's always going to depend on whose receiver you're in too, man. Some receivers are a little bit more narrow banded, and they may be listening to your audio through the cheap little tiny speaker in the bottom of the radio. So lows are definitely not coming through that. And if they got a couple of Bose bookshelf speakers, you're definitely going to rock the house, like broadcast and everything in between,
Yeah, my usual MO, not usual, but my past MO for a long time was trying to get bass out of no bass. In other words, I let the concept of even harmonic distortion and simulating some of the harmonics that are generated that you normally account for being there by the presence of having low bass, and so by the psychoacoustic characteristics of having some harmonics down there simulating having more bass than you really have, I would push that to the actual limit of how far that can go, and I would try to cram bass down everybody's receiver. I wanted everything. I wanted the stock 148 and the 2510 to sound rolling bassy and heavy, and I wanted to at the same time I wanted to have that rolling bassy heavy sound in an SDR or a Drake or a big broadcast receiver or a R390A or something. And you just can't do that. You can't expect that. And so I've mellowed things out quite a bit. I pulled a lot of the bottom end out. There's still plenty of bottom end. It still sounds full and rich and fairly commanding, but you also when you do that, you pick up that loudness, a little bit more loudness, a little bit more peakiness in the wheelhouse of most receivers. And in the grand scheme of things, as much as I don't want to admit it, it helps, obviously it helps. I still favor a lot of bottom end. When I hear a signal in a pileup, my ears, I hear whatever's there, but I tend to pick up on a lot of the low frequencies that a lot of people are having these days in a pileup, and people say, oh, no, it's the upper mid-range and the high frequencies that make it through the pileup. You don't want any bass in there at all. Well, the real view is that the bass, if it's extending beyond somebody else's bass, is going to be articulation and intelligibility down at a low level that actually makes it through into the receiver. And my ears are happy with that. They like that, but that doesn't mean that it's better. It means for my for my situation, I tend to gravitate toward that sound. But I'm sitting here talking and thinking about this idea of trying to get the Drake or the 148 or another receiver's audio into this feed. I don't know how to do that. The computer, the way I've got OBS set up right now, if I'm looking at OBS, you can pull audio from multiple sources, I believe. But usually they're sources that are, there's a mic aux level one. Huh. You know what? Interesting. There's a slider on OBS called mic aux. And if I turn it up or down, it's a fixed level. What does that do? What does that sound like? I can't even hear what happened. I'm not monitoring OBS now, but when I slightly turn that up, it looks, hello. It looks like noise. I don't know if it's noise or feedback, but there's a consistent level. There's also a mic aux 2. What does that do? Let me turn that up and down. Same thing. It looks like feedback or noise. Maybe somebody on YouTube can give me a message and let me know, type in the live text there, if that was noise or if that was feedback. If it was, noise, or was it feedback? I'd be interested to see what that sounded like. Motormouth Mall, cruising this thing. Yeah, I'd like to figure out how to get the other hardwired input to work as a feed. And then every so often I could just pot that up, and let you listen to what's happening on one receiver or the other. If it's that easy, that'd be really cool. Anyway, yeah, something to do while I'm bored, Debray.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, that would definitely give a more broader spectrum. It would be like getting a couple of different radio checks from just one person, in one location. So it kind of takes out the variable as far as distance or antenna or anything like that. It's just a different receiver. So yeah, man, that's a pretty cool idea. As far as when you were making adjustments there, I couldn't hear anything on the live audio, just to let you know over the air. I couldn't hear anything. I'm not listening to YouTube though, so I can't help you there. But yeah, it sounded, didn't hear any difference out here.
Okay, well, I just now brought YouTube up on my phone since nobody typed in here to let me know. So I'm going to see what happens real fast. I'll go ahead and pop that up and down and see what that does. Let me go back over to OBS over here. And I hear you in my phone. And here comes this. Right, all the way up. Now all the way back down again. Let's see what I hear. Hang on, I'll be right back. Okay, I heard an echo. I heard a little bit of echo on my voice, and I heard a electronic weird noise. I heard that, and it's not something that I would like, but I would imagine that maybe if I plugged something into that jack, maybe it would negate that noise. But yeah, when I listened to it and turned it up, it had like a weird electronic noise, like a cyclic pulsing sound, coupled with a little bit of a duplicate on on my audio. And Eric, you said it sounded like a bunch of interference on YouTube. All right, well then that's what that. Yeah, I think we both heard similar things. So it wasn't desirable. So I got to figure out how to feed that other feed without pulling in that electronic noise.
Yeah, with nothing plugged into it, could have been RF getting in there or something, causing a weird thing to happen. Now, when you're talking about plugging into that, now what exactly are you saying? Are you talking about taking feed off of your antenna and or to route it to one of the other radios, like the 148 or something?
I would take an audio feed. I would have an external antenna, receiving right off the air into a 148, for example, with no modifications done to the receiver whatsoever, and then take the audio output of that 148 and feed it into my audio input of the computer on the sound card, which is what that fader was supposed to be turning up and down, the audio input, mic auxiliary audio input of the sound card. So I should be able to replace that audio with audio from an external radio, and maybe by plugging something into it, for one, it won't act as an antenna, maybe it won't pick up that noise, maybe the signal-to-noise ratio might be such that, the radio level would override that to the point where you couldn't hear it or whatever. But yeah, that would be cool. Then during the OBS playback, while somebody was listening to the Watergate, I could momentarily pot that up temporarily, instead of the SDR receiver being there, I could actually pot the SDR volume down on the console, which actually doesn't change OBS. I'd have to pot it down on the software. I'd pot the audio down on the SDR Play software, and then I would pot up that fader on OBS, and that would allow that audio from the external receiver to go through and let OBS broadcast that. And then when I was done showing that demo, I could turn that fader back down and then run the fader back up on the SDR Play and go back to it. So yeah, it'd be like having two different radios, and then if I put that audio wire on a selector source or a selector switch, I could switch that technically from the Drake to the 7300 to the 148 or any other radio that I might have in line. So there's room for some experimentation there.
Yeah, there is, man. There's a whole lot of ideas going on there. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of possibilities to get a whole lot of different receivers' opinions about what your audio sounds like, what other people's audio sounds like. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I guess using the 148 as an example again, take an 1/8" jack and plug it into the external speaker of that radio, and a 1/4" jack on the other end and plug it into the console, right? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'd plug the 1/8" speaker output of the radio directly into the OBS computer's sound card, and then let OBS listen to that input on the sound card.
Okay, so that wouldn't work though, because the sound card's definitely going to color the audio. It's definitely going to change it. I think for the only way that you can get an actual, unbiased example of somebody's audio is to make sure that it stays 100% analog. Because anytime you start putting people's audio through a computer, there's always a chance that it could do like what the SDR is doing in some weird way or some other way. Especially sound cards and computers. Sound cards and computers are absolute garbage, man. They're terrible. Sound cards in audio interfaces are much better, and those will vary depending on the interface. But yeah, if you could figure out a way but yeah, I see what you're saying though, because you're trying to feed it on YouTube, so that's the only way to do that. Huh. I don't know, you could try it. But if you wanted to hear it yourself, just into your own ears, to get an accurate assessment of somebody's audio without it being, filtered in any way, yeah, it would just have to come directly out of the radio's speaker, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, of it is once you come out analog from the radio, no, not Street Outlaw Bobby, Bobby Bouchet Bobby, in the big rig over here in Santa Maria. He's parked not too far from me. You come out of the analog of the receiver and you have to get it onto YouTube somewhere. It's got to go into a digital to analog converter at some point, whether it's a sound card or a dedicated interface that might have a better quality input characteristic than the sound card. But it's got to be converted to digital somehow to get it onto YouTube. So not sure how to do that, but except for I have to try it first and see just how much degradation there is before I start trying to fix the problem. I got to figure out how much of a problem there is to fix.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, for it to go on YouTube, it's got to go digital for sure. If you got an extra interface, an extra audio interface, you could route the external jack from the speaker output of the radio into the input of the that'll work. That would work. You can use a 1/4-inch jack to plug into the input of the mic input of an audio receiver that's coming out of the external speaker jack of the radio, and then use your normal USB cable to route it into the computer. As long as you have extra USB jacks on your computer, so that would probably work.
Yeah, that would. You know what? I just realized I am using an audio interface on SDR. So it's the SDR is using the audio interface to generate the audio that's coming over my console and my speakers and the receiver and all that stuff. So that very same SDR output is also an input. It's an SDR it's a USB interface, and so maybe I could use the second channel. Well, actually, it's getting the signal, that interface is getting the signal USB from the computer and then putting it out to the headphone jack. So if I used one of the two inputs as an audio input and fed that audio into OSB, that would probably be a better quality signal than going into the sound card, external speaker, external microphone or auxiliary input or line level input port. So yeah, if I use that same interface to feed audio into the computer, into OBS, that would probably negate a lot of the issues of a poor sound card. And, well, it ain't going to happen today, but it might happen tomorrow or the next day. I might look into that because it would be really, really interesting to be able to feed other analog signals into the USB stream on YouTube. Even if it wasn't another receiver, I don't know what it would be, but I guess it would be another receiver. But I think that would be the hot ticket to look at next. That would certainly give a lot more flexibility to the accuracy of my, or not accuracy of, but, more like having two different radios, getting a radio check, two for the price of one.
Yeah, definitely. That would be pretty interesting. Yeah, and again, that's to get the audio over YouTube, but for your own personal ears, just having something as simple as that 5/8 plugged into one of your radios over there, whatever radio you choose, just to have that raw, unadulterated, straight connection that you can listen to just yourself, so that you can do a comparison from all the other options that you have. And then that way you can find out, it is kind of apples and oranges, but there's definitely going to be something lost in the digital realm, the digital domain. There's going to be some coloration happening, at least a little bit. Even if you have, a $30,000 camera and you're shooting YouTube videos, that audio that goes over YouTube is seeing an algorithm, a compression algorithm, no matter what. You can't get away from it. That's what YouTube does. All platforms do that. But the point I was making is, you could have something that's just strictly analog for your own ears so that you can get that comparison. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even the bare bones minimum of for example, if you were to, let's do some here. Hello, test. Yep, okay. If you were to, just put audio, straight analog audio, into any digital device, it has, usually a 5-volt rail, and you've got to, you only have so many ones and zeros. And when you run out of rail voltage or ones and zeros, you end up with garbage, and it'll go into compression, or it'll throw away data, or do all kinds of weird things. So you've got to stay within that range right off the get-go. You're limited to what you can do going into the interface. And then, like you say, once you get into the interface, YouTube or Facebook or whatever other platform you're trying to go up to is going to have a particular bit rate and algorithm and all that it's going to want to deal with, and it'll convert various different things into that particular bit rate or algorithm, or you have to set it up to where it matches that particular algorithm, and there's going to be a loss. No way around it, really. But I'm looking forward to trying something like that. We'll see what it does, and I'm all for it. It sounds like a whole lot of next world realm of feeds on live feeds for folks who are interested in that kind of stuff, like you and I. So very cool, awesome. I'll get on it and see what it does. You know what? I have this switcher on my console already set up, and it's got a feed from the Drake and a feed from the SDR, a feed from the 7300, and a feed from the 2510. And currently that wire, the output of that switcher is going nowhere, because it used to feed the analog. It still goes to the analog encoder for YouTube, but that's not being used anymore, so it's going nowhere. And all I have to do is move it from the analog encoder of YouTube over to the interface, and then set the interface up as the input for the OBS, and then get the level set right. So it wouldn't take a whole lot, but it's, like I say, it's not going to happen right now, but I've got it all planned out. It would be something I could do if I put my mind to it pretty quick, but I just don't want to do it right now.
Yeah, 10-4. Well, we'll be here till tomorrow. We don't know when our appointment is. Sometime tomorrow. So if you got a second wind and wanted to try doing something, before then I can be the guinea pig and see what it sounds like out here. But yeah, that'll be interesting, when you eventually get around to it, at least, it's going to definitely give a lot more options as far as what the audio sounds like, not just to you, but what it sounds like over YouTube as well, and just now, finding out that the SDR is definitely doing something to the audio. You're like me, man. It's about accuracy, making sure that that the replication of somebody's audio is being done faithfully. So, and that's the whole point of a gate to begin with, and you always try to get it as accurate as possible so that people can listen to their audio and see how they sound, and trust that what they're listening to is accurate. And then you guys, then there's those guys out there that EQ people's gates, their audio coming into their own gate, which I don't understand, man. I mean, that just destroys the whole point of the gate. Somebody watches their gate and they go, well, I didn't know I had that much bass. I better turn the bass down. Well, what that guy didn't know is the guy that was doing the gating pushed the bass up 4 or 5, 6 dB for his own ears, and I don't understand why people do stuff like that. I don't know if it's just out of ignorance. They don't realize that they're destroying the whole reason for the gate, or what.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I can think of a few that do that. I also realize that if I make this change, it would also be cool to be able to choose on my playbacks, my actual live playback feed on Adobe Audition that I record audio onto and play it back from. I should be able to switch that over to record from either the SDR or the on-air receiver. So the same receiver that I would be using to say, hey, let's say the 148, for example, I would take a tap off that 148 feed and feed it over to my recording computer instead of the SDR, so that when I do a playback, the playback isn't what the SDR heard, but what a regular receiver heard. So my playbacks could be a little bit more faithful to a standard stock receiver compared to an SDR as well. So that's another feature I can add in there with just one switch.
Oh yeah, that would probably be amazing right there, because most people don't have wideband receive, and that's what an SDR is, no matter where you set it. I mean, if you roll it down to 3K, then it's lopping everything off at the top and doesn't sound right, compared to what a normal receiver hears. But yeah, that would be dead nuts on what people are hearing in their receives everywhere. I mean, 99% of people are listening through a standard receiver. And so if you played them back through what they came through a standard receiver, then that would be probably more accurate than anything else, especially with a stock radio, because stock radio is not being wide-banded. But I would like to hear that too, because, I'm directly transmitting to most people with standard receivers as well, being 5K wide, It'd be interesting to hear what that sounds like going through just a standard receiver.
Roger. Now, at the 1 hour and 36-minute mark, you might want to write that down. At the 1 hour and 36-minute mark, I narrowed up the actual brick wall to roughly 2.5 kilohertz. And obviously, you lost all the high end when I did that, but I didn't roll the bass because the bass is the bass. It's there. There's no. I kind of wish that the SDR had a bass slider on it that you could use to limit bass. Most receivers that limit themselves at 2.5 or 3 kilohertz on the high end, they also have a built-in inherent, 250 hertz or 300 hertz roll off on the bass, and so their total balance sounds a little bit better because there's that ridiculous amount of bass for that particular amount of high end is rolled out. Whereas on me, over here, I rolled your high end down, but all the bass was still there, so it made it sound very muddy and kind of that. But if I rolled that bass out, I could proportionately tailor the bass out to make the existing highs that are left over actually sound better. So I'm going to roll it back up again now when I get up off the key. But anyway, but yeah, our audio right now is being chopped, both mine and yours, is being chopped off at 2,500 hertz. And it sounds horrible because the bass is still there. So actually, while I'm on the key, I'll go ahead and roll this back up again, back to 5K right there. And then when you get up back on the key again, you'll be back to normal again as well. But yeah, it's interesting how that works. So I wish the SDR had a little bit of a bass simulation roll-off attenuator, whatever you want to call it, to be able to attenuate those low frequencies or roll off those low frequencies depending on where you want them to be as you mechanically or whatever roll off the highs. But it doesn't have that, so oh well.
Yeah, but even the highs that you're rolling down isn't accurate because on the SDR it's a brick wall filter. It's 100% brick wall. People's receivers don't use brick wall filters. They roll off probably 12 dB per octave. So 200 hertz to 2,500 hertz standard receiver frequency response. It's rolled off. It's not chopped off like on the SDR. Huge difference in what that sounds like. Everybody can hear my 5 kilohertz S in their receivers. It's because it's not lopped off at 2,500. It rolls off gently at about 12 dB per octave. So even if you did have a way to attenuate the lows, you still wouldn't be able to replicate what a standard receiver sounds like unless you had a different filtering option, because the brick wall is just that. It stops everything from going beyond that. So there's 25 or 12 dB per octave it attenuates every 12 dB beyond that cutoff. For every octave beyond that cutoff, it's attenuated 12 dB. And so every time the frequency doubles, it's an octave, and it's down 12 dB, and then it just keeps going down. So it really wouldn't work. I mean, it'd be interesting if there was an SDR that actually had a roll-off to replicate what a standard receiver sounds like.
That's absolutely true. That's true. Yeah, it's a brick wall on the cutoff on the SDR. So yeah, if it could be made to be a roll-off, that'd be really nice. You know, I don't know if there's a you know, it'd be the same filter that would simulate the roll-off of the bass. Maybe you could apply that to the highs if there was a way to do that. But yeah, you're right. Wherever you set the highs is where they go, and that's it. I'm looking at my SDR thinking, gosh, if there's something that I've ever overlooked in the past that affects that roll-off and that can change that roll-off. And there's a high-pass filter FC. It's set at 50. I don't know what that is. There's also a filter bandwidth plus or minus hertz, 500. Okay, that's fine. But that HP filter FC, wonder if that's high-pass filter cutoff rate. I don't want to change that. I'm going to have to read the manual before I get into that. But it's in the SAM/HP category. I don't know what that means. Not in the mode to want to find out just yet. But yeah, I'm looking at that thinking there might be a place where you can change that brick wall from the brick wall that it is to something less brick wally and more of a roll-off. And there may very well be something I don't know about here.
Yeah, those SDRs, man, you know, I was using one for a little while, a couple years ago. I still have it, but it wasn't working in here. I just couldn't get my antennas to work right with it. But, you know, and it's just not useful for me in here anyway, man. I'm always driving, and it hurt my transmit and my receive too much, you know, drove the SWRs up and reactance and everything. But yeah, they're complicated, man. I didn't spend a whole lot of time exploring all the rabbit holes, but I'll tell you what, man, you know, I guess ham operators really love that kind of stuff, and God bless them, you know, that's cool. But it's mind-numbing to me, man. You know, I mean, I'm a techie guy, and I like technology and figuring out how things work and using things to their optimal level of whatever it is. But some of this stuff is just literally mind-numbing. You know, it's just not important to me, and I just don't care. And if I'm not interested, man, I'm just not even getting into it.
Yeah, that's how I am. A lot of people have asked me questions about sideband, for example. How do I do wideband extended ESSB and blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, I know I could wrap my head around it if I wanted to, but I just don't care about it. And the fact that I don't care, I'm not going to give it a second thought. I mean, it's like, it doesn't do anything for me, so why even entertain that thought? So, yeah, I get that. I totally get that. I'm looking at the manual for, or actually a group that's talking about this IF signal mode on the SDR Uno. I'm going to read a little bit of that here in a little while, see what I can learn about that, because there's got to be some way to simulate a regular receiver. And it may default to the absolute brick wall that an SDR is capable of, but there also might be some way to override that and literally make it a roll-off at so many dB per octave. That would be really cool.
Yeah, now that's definitely something I'd be interested in. I mean, I think that would be pretty amazing. I mean, if, you know, it's not something you'd want to leave on all the time necessarily, but it is helpful, you know, and especially for people watching the gate, you know, because if they are trying to get on the gate and make adjustments or changes, you know, it's one thing to adjust how your audio sounds to an SDR receiver, and a completely different story when it comes to tuning it for just a standard receiver. You know, my audio has always traditionally been overly bright on the SDR, and I keep that in mind, that there's a lot of attenuation in the highs in a standard receiver. And getting the feedback I've gotten over the years, I kind of learned that balance, knowing that, okay, on the SDR, My S's are going to be blown out. It's going to be way brighter than what I would like it to sound. But I always know that in a regular receiver, that tones down a lot, and so if you had that option, man, that'd be pretty amazing.
Yep, I agree. I'm going to look into it and see what I can learn, because that would be kind of nice to mimic the roll-off. You're right. Your audio is definitely, is bright, it's brilliant, it's crisp, but it's certainly not going to be that same level of crispness and brightness on a receiver that rolls off at 3K or something like that. But the presence of the energy that's there is certainly going to manifest itself and show itself through just fine for how it sounds in that receiver. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Well, food for thought, and between those two things, I see I have some things I can experiment with and play with when I get in the mood.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I was just thinking about that too. If a receiver is 200 hertz to 2500 hertz, which is what this receiver on this Striker is, from 2500 hertz to 5K, that's one octave, and 12 dB per octave means, whatever is being heard at 2500 hertz is what it is, but it slopes down. By the time it gets to 5K, it's down 12 dB. So all those frequencies above 2500 hertz are slowly going down until the 5K level or 5K mark. And at 5K, that frequency is going to be 12 dB quieter, attenuated than the 2500. And as far as the 200 hertz on the lows, the 12 dB per octave roll-off means, the audio, the bass at 100 hertz is going to be 12 dB lower than the bass at 200 hertz because, that's one octave. So, yeah, that's interesting, man. That would be pretty cool if you can figure out a way to do that.
And well, I'll certainly work at it. That's going to be, that'll be kind of fun. It certainly would be useful to you and I and who knows who else, but for those who care, for those who don't care, they don't need to worry about it. So yeah, very cool. Yeah, always something to work towards there, Break.
Yeah, it never ends, and that's the fun part, man. Just when you think you're done, you learn something, and then when you learn something, you learn about 10 other things you didn't know that you didn't know, and then you start learning a couple of those things that you didn't know, and then you unravel a whole other, avenue of other things you didn't know that you didn't know, and it just keeps going from there. And that's I like it, man, because you just keep learning, and that's a fun part of the hobby. But anything, that it doesn't necessarily have to make anything better or even different. It's just getting the knowledge, and it's part of enjoying, what we do out here.
Yep, seeing how things relate to each other, see how they all work one way versus another way. Is there multiple ways to skin a cat? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? A lot of people that maybe haven't thought about all of the various different scenarios and why the scenarios mean anything or why they don't mean anything. Why some methods that some people use work for them and why they don't work for others. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. There are right or wrong parameters. There are right or wrong. You got to stay in your lane when you're driving, but nothing says how fast you got to, how fast or slow you got to go in the lane, or how much you can encroach on the edges of the lane. But you got to stay in your lane, So anyway, there's right and wrongs, but there's also no right and wrongs, depending on. There are no right and wrong methods to achieve the right or wrong, the right results, if that makes any sense. But anyway, yeah, good stuff. It's the same thing that applies to a lot of the antenna stuff that I've done. I've learned a lot about antennas. I've learned a lot about not what to believe about antennas, a lot about what to expect from an antenna, what to expect from optimizing one part of an antenna or another, and what to give up, how the trade-offs and all that kind of stuff. And some of the ideas I've had that got blown out of the water, and things that I thought would meant something or would work or whatever that didn't work, and you just learn along the way. So anyway, it's all part of the same thing, knowledge, and how it applies to each and every individual person may be different, but nevertheless, it's something. So without trying to sound too vague or what's the word? You know the word I'm talking about. Oh, shoot. I hate when this happens. Anyway, not trying to be too vague. I think with that, I'm going to say I got some work to do, and I can't wait to dive into this experiment and see where it takes us. And the next time you roll into town, maybe I'll have something ready for that, and I can experiment with it a little bit between now and then and see if it's what we think it's going to be.
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah, I'll definitely let you know next time we're going to roll into town. And yeah, well, I don't know, like I was saying, I don't know what time our appointment is tomorrow because we don't yet have an appointment. But, if I get a chance, I'll shoot you a text and let you know either way. But, if I got a chance to talk to you and you decided to try something different, then you did. And if you didn't, then you didn't. Either way, it's cool. But, yeah, we'll be here for a period of time tomorrow. But yeah, like you were saying though, man, it's an accumulation of knowledge, man, and it does make it easier to get in there and when you start experimenting, because you already have prior knowledge of what will work or won't work, and then you have that area, that gray area where you're not sure, and you can spend more of your time in that area, if anything, to learn something. And yeah, it's always interesting.
Yep. Well, see, I'm going to go grab a bite to eat, I think, and get my stomach quieted down. And maybe once I do that, I might look at the wiring. I'll look at both the coax run as well as the audio feed. And I don't think I'm going to address the recording issue yet because there's a little bit more involved it's just a switch, but there's a little bit more involved in making that work because the computer is in the other room and audio cabling's in the other room, and I want the switch to be in here and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to deal with that, but I think I will look at the coax, and I will see if I can liven up that auxiliary feed and do that first step of that whole thing, just to see if I can feed audio from the receiver into the auxiliary jack and see where we go with that. So anyway, I'll give it a shot, or not the auxiliary jack, but the input of the interface. Anyway, I got it drawn out and scratched out on paper, so I might take a look at that, maybe let's see if we can get back up on the band here afterwards. And do I have company? No, it's an airplane or something overhead. Anyway, so we'll see where that goes, and maybe I can catch you before you get out of town tomorrow. And I may or may not have that hooked up, but we'll definitely try to catch you regardless, one way or the other.
All right, John, sounds good, man. Yeah, I got to get going too. I got to eat something and get over into a parking spot, so I'm not pissing off any more drivers. But yeah, it sounds good, man. And yeah, I'll shoot you a text, I don't know, sometime in the morning, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, it's always good to get out here and talk to you, man. We'll catch up with you sometime tomorrow, maybe.
All right, sounds good. And I'm really surprised we haven't heard much northwest corner roll up in here. I've had this antenna looking at the northwest corner this entire time, an hour and 53 minutes on this gate. I heard one person try to get up on my radio, and I believe they were in the northwest corner, but I never heard anything after that. All right, sounds good. Take care. Bobby Bouchet, always a pleasure with the double measure. We'll look forward to doing it again real soon. And, man, you got that mall down. Keep on doing what you're doing. Your West Coast, undermodulated beast, in the voice of the Central Coast of Cali. Working this great, big, sprawling broadcast facility out of Studio 3B. Got down right there, breaker.
Roger. All right, Motormouth Molly, take it easy, and we'll catch up to you a little bit later on. Bobby Boucher, back quiet. I'll see you.
And by the way, when you key down, when you hear that microphone button hard enough and you get that clink, I like the sound. It sounds like you're in a big old base station. All right, catch you later on.
Check.